Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Um, Hi everyone. It's Virginia, Lainey, and Grace, the Library Love Fest team at HarperCollins, here for another exciting episode of Writers to Watch. My camera's not working, so yeah, sometimes it's better that way.
Hmm. You
But
know,
Lainey's and Grace is working, and so is Laura Lippman's and Susan Wiggs and Allison King and Nikki Erlick. And we're so excited to have everybody on here today to talk about their forthcoming books. So we'll jump right in because we had a little bit of technical difficulty. So I'm going to hand it over to Grace and or Lainey to talk about, well, just some housekeeping before we dive right in with
yeah,
Miss Susan Wiggs.
sweet. Okay. So I'll talk about Galley Gap Fest tomorrow at 2 p.m. So you get a lot of Library Love Fest right off the bat. And by a lot of Library Love Fest, I mean just me tomorrow. Virginia and Lainey will not be there, but I will be continuing our presentation from our Library Journal webinar a few weeks back to, wrap up some stuff that we didn't get to because we had so many good books to tell you about. So come see me chat. It's 2 p.m., but you can bring any drink you would like. Um,
Are you
maybe
going to bring a drink, Grace?
while I'm working, so for legal reasons, no.
You're no
But
fun.
it'll be a fun little time. I'm thinking of St. Patrick's Day related questions for all of you. So there's that. And
I
then
see Grace rubbing her hands together just
I
off
know, like,
screen. Like, I can't wait to take over.
um, so Lady, do you want to talk about our next episode of Writers to Watch after this one?
Well, thank you. I would love to. We're so excited for our next one. We're having all of these great monthly meetings. This one's going to be fab, but we already have the next one ready for you so you can mark your calendar. We have Sue Halpern, we have Allie Carter. We have two authors for Miss Caroline Bingley, and then, of course, Diane McKinney Whetstone. We've got a little bit of everything for every reader, or if you just like all kinds of books, you've got something to read after this one. So be sure to mark your calendar, April 8th, 7 p.m., same time, same place, different day, and we'll see you in April.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else to talk about before we start with our first author?
I don't think so.
Okay, I just want to reiterate one thing. So I think it was last week or last year, I don't remember. Lainey, Grace, and I did the world famous book buzz part 112 with Library Journal, and we bit off a little bit more than we could chew. And so while we got through many of the titles, Grace is going to pick up where we left off because we did run out of time. So among other things that she's going to do, and I can't wait to see what she comes up with. She is going to talk about the books that we didn't get to. So anyway, I don't know if you said that, Grace, but anyway, I just want to make sure.
You know what? You're hammering in there for them, so that's perfect. They've
Cool.
come to hear about these books because they were good ones, and we don't want you to miss it. So
Yeah,
let's jump right in. Yeah.
let's do it. So first up, we're going to have Susan Wiggs come on and talk to us about her forthcoming book. So Susan,
Turn my
there,
surface camera front.
click that camera.
Yeah, I'm clicking away. Come on, surface
There
camera.
you are. Hello.
There. Okay, there I am.
Hi.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is so cool.
Yeah, this is cool. This is a wonderful lineup. It's an embarrassment of riches. We're thrilled.
Oh, that's
I mean it. Oh, come on. Look at you all. Anyway, thank you, Susan, for coming on and talking to us about your forthcoming book, Wayward Girls. So I'm going to do a brief intro, and then I'm going to just ask you to let everyone know what you want them to know about your forthcoming book. Okay, so Wayward Girls is coming out on June 17th in 2025. And New York Times bestselling author Susan Wiggs is here to tell us about it. She's the author of more than 50 novels, including the beloved Lakeshore Chronicles series and the recent New York Times bestsellers, The Lost and Found Bookshop, which is amazing, and also The Oysterville Sewing Circle and Family Tree. Her award-winning books have been translated into 24 languages. She lives with her husband on an island in Washington State's Puget Sound. Wayward Girls is a life-affirming novel based on a true story of survival, friendship, and redemption. And it's set in the turbulent Vietnam era of the all-American city of Buffalo, New York. I'm going to stop there and turn it to you, Susan, to tell people what you want them to know about this book.
Virginia, thank you. It's always so much fun to hear somebody else's, the way they characterize a book. And that's one of my favorite things about publishing is everybody reads a different book. And but Wayward Girls is really pretty special to me because of its roots are in an area that was my hometown. I grew up in a small town in Western New York. It was not too far from Buffalo, but when I was a child, we moved away. We moved overseas. And so I had these vague childlike nostalgic memories of it that were, seen through that lens. And I never went back until 2021. My big brother, John, sadly, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so he had some things on his bucket list. And I was on a mission to fulfill some of them. And one of them was he wanted to go back to our hometown. And so we flew into Buffalo and we explored the area and we had a really good time. And so this was kind of a nostalgia trip in that way. And I didn't have a thought of what I would be working on next. But when we visited the church where we grew up, and it was until I was 10, so I was really young. I was kind of flooded by memories that had been buried, and they sort of reawakened because I remember vividly that John, my brother, he was an altar boy for about 5 minutes, and I think the first or second time he was an altar boy, he was does anybody know what a thurifer is? The thurible is the thing with the incense in it, and they swing it when they come into high mass, and there's coals and everything. And I remember that his altar boy robe sleeve caught fire from the thurifer, and based on that, it kind of awakened a lot of memories. So I became interested in the impact of the Catholic Church because in that area, and I'm sure in a lot of areas, it was a real dominant factor in the late 60s and the early 70s. And I came across, I'll give you the address because if anybody's anywhere near Buffalo, you should check this out. It's 485 Best Street, Best. There's it looks like a fortress there. And I was very curious about it. It turned out that this was, it was called the Good Shepherd. It was run by nuns, and it was actually a Magdalene laundry. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, you might have heard of them in connection with Ireland. In Ireland, the Magdalene laundries there was a big scandalous reveal about that. A big book called Small Things Like These was a very acclaimed book came out. It became a film just last December. So people were kind of aware that this is where the bad girls were sent. And this is what happened to them. And there happened to be at least 38 that I could find in the US. And probably the worst one was in Buffalo, and it's still there. It's not a Magdalene laundry anymore. But the building and the complex is still there. And so I kind of did a deep dive into that. And then I had another kind of several vague memories of my babysitters. I had many babysitters because there were kids in my family, but they went away. And that I later learned that was a euphemism for, where you send your unplanned pregnant daughters to do whatever. And it was the more I learned, it was such a brutal way that some of these girls were treated. And suddenly it got really personal just because of my connection to the area. None of this happened to me and I wasn't aware of it, but I started taking it really personally. And I wanted to write the book for a long time. And for those of you who are familiar with my books, it's not really a typical feel-good Susan Wiggs book. And so I was really gratified when my publisher, William Morrow Books at HarperCollins, when they really kind of embraced it even though it wasn't on brand for me. When I pitched it, they just, my editor said, well, let's go for it. Let's drill down on it. And so that was how, they sort of, yeah, thank you. They sort of freed me to um, have my way with this story. And it was a painful and a pleasure to write. And I can't wait for people to read it. One correction to the pub date, it's July 15. It was moved around a couple times. It'll be out July 15.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no problem. Yeah, so this slide, I just thought it'd be fun to have a look at this slide. My first book was published in 1987, before any of you were born. And I published a book or two ever since. And so I thought I'd show the contrast. I got my start, as many of my writer friends did, in sexy historical romances in the 80s. And so that was my first book, Texas Wildflower. And now we have Wayward Girls. So I'm still at it.
And thank God you are.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
and this this is another how it started. And this is actually this is a true story. This one was a book that I had. Hang on, I'm so sorry. Hang on. Never fails, never fails. This one, I'm so happy that my mom saved this, because I had that third grade teacher who I wish every kid would have, and her name was Mrs. Green, and I told her that I wanted to be a book writer. And she said, well, if you want to write books, you should be writing books. You should start right now. And she gave me, the tablet and the stapler and, and just a little bit of advice. And I would write books in her class, and then she would read them aloud to the class, holding up the pictures and the illustrations and everything. And so I was really, I don't know, I was really motivated by her. So I'm just pleased that my mom, saved this artifact for me.
what was her name?
Mrs. Green, she taught grade 3 in Olean, New York, and she was the magic teacher. Oh, you know what else happened in third grade? I don't know if they still do this, but in third grade, you changed from manuscript printing to cursive writing. And for me, that was such a moment. That was such a magic moment that I could, finally write in cursive. I was obsessed with it. And I still am. Look at wait, check it out. This is my this is how I write now.
Oh,
So I don't know. All my books I write in longhand.
wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I think there was I don't want to give you any spoilers. What else can I tell you about Wayward? Oh, there were a couple of oh, there it is. That's the place in Buffalo. That's 485 Best Street. It was built in the 1880s, and up until the late 1960s, it was a Magdalen laundry. It was a workhouse for girls that were kind of lost in the social system. Some of them were considered, they were vagrants. Some were pregnant. Some were, had mental problems or whatever. And so many of them wound up in this facility, and it covers almost a whole city block. It's pretty eerie even today.
I was going to say, it's kind of haunting.
It is. It's very dark. And now it is a Muslim boys boarding school, but they didn't pretty it up at all. So I'm not quite sure. It's a little secretive. And that was actually one of the great pleasures of writing this book, is that I kind of got to research this location and learn a lot about that. And then I went on I found a Facebook group of survivors of this particular 485 Best Street. And so that's how I was able to interview a couple of women, they're in their 70s now, who were incarcerated there. And this next one is an example of the adoptions were quite irregular a lot. And so I think that that comes into this. There's a really dramatic storyline involving one of the characters who endured a really kind of shocking pregnancy, and the fallout from that. So and to this day, you can still find people who are looking for their birth parent, their birth mother, and even though the records are now open, sometimes it's really hard to find, and that kind of comes into play as well in the book.
Wow.
The next slide, I think, shows, oh, I'm not going to spoil this because it's probably my favorite moment in the book, but the public library has a lot to do with the way this story plays out, and these girls are able to move ahead with their lives. I guess I'll say that. So thank you, libraries.
I love it. Is that
Yeah.
our last picture? Is that our last
Oh, no.
image?
Well, actually, no, I want everybody to, take a screenshot of this. There's actually a distillery. I found it while I was traveling in Canada called the WAYWARD Distillery, and they make gin and they make this honey liqueur called Krupnik. I think it's a Lithuanian recipe or something like that. Anyway, it's what I call, it's an easy cocktail because the ingredients are all the same amount. 1 part gin, 1 part Krupnik, 1 part lemon, and then you finish it with tonic water. So hopefully you'll try my Wayward Girl recipe.
Oh, you're having one now?
I am. It's quite delicious.
It looks divine.
Yeah. And oh, this is just this is my 4 generations of Wayward Girls. There's my dear mom. Sadly, she passed away last year, but she was definitely wayward. Me, my daughter, who is actually she's the director of marketing at Zillow out here in Seattle,
Oh, wow.
and my very, very adorable granddaughter Clara.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, Susan, thank you for that.
You're
That
welcome.
was
You're welcome.
great. And it's different, and it's a different direction, and it's exciting. And I don't know, there's just so much, there's such a complex and layered story here. And I'm glad we're getting the word out early about this. So thank you, Susan. Everybody have some questions ready because we'll be coming back after all 4 authors have spoken, and then they'll answer any questions that you have to write in.
Okay.
All right. So now, Susan, we're going to say goodbye temporarily, and ladies next.
Is me, and some great comments already coming in just about that. They love seeing that image, so thank you for sharing, and a lot of great comments. Everybody's so excited to be here. So next we're going to talk to Allison King. Allison, if you'll come on camera. There you are. Hello, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I've been thinking about your book all week, and I'm so excited to hear more. It's your debut. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does it feel? Is it like just everything coming at once, or is it like, oh, I expected this?
No, it definitely everything coming at once, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, congratulations.
Going through the motions, yeah.
Yeah, it's fabulous. So I'm going to do a quick intro and then I'm going to let you take it away. So Allison King is a writer and software engineer based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In technology, her work has ranged from semiconductors to platforms for community conversations to data privacy, which will probably come up in this conversation. Her short stories have appeared in Fantasy Magazine, Diabolical Plots, and LeVar Burton Reads, among others. And she's a 2023 Reese's Book Club Lit Up Fellow. And like I said, this is your debut. It comes out in June. And I just want to read this quick. It says, combining the cross-generational family saga and epistolary form of a tale for the time being with the uplifting emotional magic of the Midnight Library, your stunning debut asks, who owns and inherits our stories? So I'm going to let you take it over and tell us more about the Phoenix Pencil Company.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro. Yeah, I'm gonna share my pictures, and okay, all right, here we go. So the Phoenix Pencil Company is a book about a granddaughter discovering the history and magic behind the pencil company her grandmother ran in Shanghai back in the 1940s. This book was largely inspired by my own grandparents. You can see here, that's me cheesing between them. But they really did run a pencil company in Shanghai and Taiwan before they came to the United States. I grew up living with them, and they pretty much were the ones who raised me, and it was the best because they totally spoiled me. They take me to McDonald's every day, let me go to school late if I was feeling sleepy. But I really didn't know much about their past because it wasn't something that they like to talk about. So the only concrete thing I did know, because it was too cool not to know, was that they ran a pencil company. So here's a picture of their pencil company in Taiwan. This photo is from the 1950s, I believe. But as an aspiring writer, I love the idea of a pencil company. And my grandmother would tell me stories about like the machinery they had to press the wood of the pencils together, and how my mom and her siblings played in the lumber stacks in the back. But like many kids of immigrants, I didn't think to ask about my grandparents' story until it was too late. So when I was in middle school, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she slowly but steadily began to lose her memory. And by the time I did learn about the kinds of things she had lived through, such as World War II, and the Chinese Civil War, and martial law in Taiwan, it was too late to ask her about them. So during the pandemic, I started writing a book about a pencil company in the 1940s Shanghai, kind of as a way to imagine what her story might have been, with the backdrop of all these wars. So the book is based on my family, of course, but I didn't know most of the details, so I really just made up a bunch of stuff. But it gave me the freedom to invent and imagine more. So the pencils have a magic to them. The family members can bring back what a pencil once wrote. And this leads to the pencils being used by the government to send encrypted messages around, and all sorts of danger follows. And the pencils inadvertently introduced another theme I was very interested in, which Lainey hinted at, but that's data privacy. So I'm going to take a quick segue here to talk about another aspect of my life, which is that I am a software engineer. And you may have even seen my code before. I wrote a good chunk of the code that makes up this cookie consent banner at the bottom of many websites, but perhaps most notably the New York Times. And you should click reject all right there. That's the right thing to do. But oops, okay. So that's the so there's a second point of view in the Phoenix Pencil Company, which is that of a modern day software engineer and granddaughter who may or may not have a lot of similarities to me. So alternating with the point of view of her grandmother, who's crafting pencils for war, is her granddaughter, who's trying her best to learn her grandmother's story before her grandmother's memory fades. And but her grandmother doesn't really want her to know her story, because with her ability to revive words from a pencil, she becomes an especially dangerous weapon during a time of war and revolution, when people are spying on and turning each other in. So the book is secretly all about data privacy and who owns a story and when a story should be shared. That all makes the book sound darker than it is, though, I think. So yes, it's about war and immigration and Alzheimer's and data-hungry software. But I don't want to write something tragic or terribly sad. Having grown up caring for someone with Alzheimer's, I found you really have to find the moments of levity and laughter and humanity, and that's how you keep going. So I think this book has some pretty funny moments, and in particular, there's a romance that the granddaughter has with a digital archivist, which I had a lot of fun writing. And the romance can pretty much be summarized by this comic, which is one woman leaning suggestively into another woman, asking if she's nervous. And the nervous woman says yes. And the first woman asks if it's her first time. The nervous woman very seriously says that no, she's been nervous before. And this comic is from ryucaro.tumblr.com. So all in all, the Phoenix Pencil Company is historical and it's fantasy, and there's some romance, but really at its core, it's just a story of a family, and in particular, the story of a granddaughter who loves her grandparents very much. And I hope you all enjoy it.
Oh, that's so great. I love seeing those photos. That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
fun to find
you're
them.
and you're so right. There's so many layers in there. I mean, it's got darker topics, but it goes very well between, these lighter moments as well. And I think that that's going to be great for book clubs because there's a lot to discuss. And mainly everyone's going to be thinking about you when they say reject all for the New York
Yes.
Times. That's very interesting. Cool. Well, thank you so much, and we'll bring you back on. There's a lot of love in the chat. Everyone's so excited to ask you more. So we'll be back in just a minute, and I'm going to hand it off to Virginia again. Virginia, good. Can you? Oh no. Oh, you're muted, V. So just.
Okay, sorry. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Virginia.
How are you, friend?
I'm good, actually. I am good. I know I came in kind of in a vague, spacey state, but I'm very present now. And I and those first two, I mean, God, the books sound so amazing. I'm totally sold. I'm like, yes, I need those books right now.
And you will get them.
I will
That's
buy them. I buy everybody's books.
You're
That's
so sweet.
I can do it, so I do it. I really do. And I'm big on pre-ordering because I know that
Oh,
actually really matters. And
it does matter.
I've been at this long enough, and Susan's been writing longer and has written more books than I have. But it really does matter. And it's now just one of the easier things that I do. And I do a lot more audiobooks these days because of my almost pathological walking. And I've really grown to appreciate them. So I order a lot of books from Libro FM because that's credited to my local indie. But anyway, yeah, I'm so excited about all the books that are being featured tonight.
Yeah, so are we. This is just, I mean, the love in the comments, which you'll be privy to after we're all done, they're amazing. So anyway, thank you. Okay. So second, while I pull up. Okay, I'm gonna do a little brief intro of you, Ms. Laura Lippman, and then have you tell us about this, another somewhat of a departure, I think, a little bit. So let me talk a little bit about you, and then you talk a little bit about Murder Takes Vacation, which is on sale June 17th, 2025, I hope, because I screwed up Susan's on sale date. Great news. Well, I'll get to the great news in a second. Let me do the intro. Since Laura Lippman's debut, she has been recognized as a distinctive voice in mystery fiction and named one of the essential crime writers of the last 100 years. Stephen King called her special, even extraordinary. And Gillian Flynn wrote, "She is simply a brilliant novelist." Her books have won most of the major awards in her field and have been translated into more than 25 languages. In 2025, Laura Lippman was named a Grand Master by the Mystery Writers of America, a Lifetime Achievement Award whose recipients have included Agatha Christie, Michael Connelly, Graham Greene, P.D. James, Elmore Leonard, and Walter Mosley. She lives in Baltimore and New Orleans with her daughter. So her new book, Murder Takes a Vacation, offers a twist on a classic whodunit and a refreshing portrait of a woman finally ready to claim agency over her own choices, proving it's never too late for second or even third chances. And I'm happy to say that you have received a starred review in Library Journal for this book. And the verdict reads, like the novel's lottery-winning protagonist, Laura Lippman's fans will feel like they hit the jackpot with this warm and cozy romp through a Paris vacation and cruise without too many lives lost along the way. Laura, tell us what you want us to know about Murder Takes a Vacation.
So I know we have a lot of wonderful avid readers here who have probably wondered if you write an email to your favorite, not your favorite, if you write an email to a writer, and in particular, if you have a complaint, do you think they pay attention? And in my case, I can tell you that I do. Back in 2005, when I published a book called To the Power of Three, the book begins in the point of view of a woman who in the early pages of the book is meant to be very nice, but she's really pretty awful. And one of the hints at how awful she is her rather cruel dismissal of a woman who's fat. And a reader wrote me and said, I understand that the point of view is unreliable. I understand that you might be using that point of view to make that point, but I really think this is not a good thing to have done. You have been, even if you're using a character's prejudice point of view, you still aired it out. And that made an impact on me. And later, the actual character of Mrs. Blossom shows up in a book, and she's really tech avoidant. And someone wrote me and they said, you are so ageist. And I wrote back and I said, this character is inspired by my mom, who was a city librarian in the public schools and was extremely good at technology, but didn't like it. My mom just she didn't want to do email. She didn't want to be on a computer. She wanted to read her newspaper in print. But at the time I created the character Muriel Blossom, I was in my late 40s. And I am now in my mid 60s. And my sister, who to a great extent inspired the character of Muriel Blossom, a shy older woman who actually has a very interesting past life and unexpected passions. My sister is now 68 and she's in assisted living because of Parkinson's.
God.
And I saw an opportunity to bring Muriel Blossom to the forefront of a novel and to write a book that, yeah, it's a caper, it's a mystery, and it's fun. She's on Paris, and everybody thinks she has some ancient statue. And she keeps telling them, I'm just a nice widow from Baltimore. I think I would know if there's a statue in my luggage. But at the same time, it was a really good opportunity to write about women of a certain age and how they move through the world and what the world expects of them and what the world forgets about them. And the book is dedicated to my mother and my sister. My mom passed away in September pretty unexpectedly. My sister is, living the life that she lives in the memory care unit of a local assisted care facility. And I really feel like the first line of this book is the book. And the first line of the book is, Mrs. Blossom had never been upgraded in her life. And then we follow a woman who's going to definitely find all kinds of upgrades, not just talking about a better seat on an airplane, but beginning to see that she is worthy of being the main character in her own life. And I hope people like it, because I would like to write more books about Mrs. Blossom, because I get to go on trips and deduct them. It's really great. Sorry. My daughter and I really took the Paris cruise that's in this book as a form of research. And I now have many other plans if things go right. So help me out here, folks.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. You this is more of a, would you say it's a cozy, more of a traditional?
It is absolutely a cozy. And as someone, I was coming off a really dark book. I was like, I got to write about somebody I actually like for 8 days. And I will say that writing a cozy is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
I have so much respect for any genre that anybody thinks is easy. I've always had so much respect for romance. In my early days as a crime writer, I met a young woman who was on a listserv, and she wrote Harlequin romances. And she sent me one of hers, and I was like, oh my God, this is a novel where you have 4 mismatched couples and you have to rearrange them and give. I was like, that's hard. I've always seen how hard romance is. I don't think I'll ever attempt that. A cozy is so hard. It was really, really a tough book to write, but it was always a joyous book to write. Because again, I was in the company of this woman that I really would hang out with her. I would totally be at the movies with her tonight if she was here in Baltimore.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Laura. You
Thank you.
intrigued many people who are listening to you right now. We'll be back to you. All right. Grace?
Great. I'm very excited to welcome our next author, Nikki Erlick. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Before I give you a formal introduction, I just want to say I wish I could explain the energy in the room when your editor announced that we had a new book by you. People were so excited, and as they should be. It's a phenomenal book.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I am going to show everybody your gorgeous cover, which has lovely sprayed edges. So this is a beautiful addition. But a bit about you. You are the author of the New York Times instant bestseller, The Measure, which was a Read with Jenna / Today Show book club pick. It has been translated into 24 languages worldwide. Nikki has a bachelor's degree from Harvard and a master's from Columbia, and you live in Los Angeles. And again, we're very excited to have you here, but I just wanted to read another a quote that we have that came in for your book from Gareth Brown, who's the author of the Book of Doors. He said, a thought-provoking and rewarding exploration of grief, loss, with wise and wonderful things to say about the healing power of friendship. So I just wanted to read that because it was a great quote.
Thank
I
you.
will let you take it away and tell everyone what you want them to know about the poppy fields.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited that you have the cover there. It's an absolutely gorgeous edition with sprayed edges and like amazing end papers that like truly I want to put like in my bedroom as like a mural. It's so stunning. And I just got to see it in person for the first time like a couple days ago, and it's it's so gorgeous. So I'm so grateful to everyone at William Morrow and HarperCollins for making it so beautiful. So yes, as Grace said, I'm Nikki Erlick. I'm the author of my new book, The Poppy Fields, and my debut novel, The Measure, came out in 2022. And it's so nice to be back chatting with the library community because this community in particular was just so supportive of my first book. I was, hugely honored that The Measure was a library read selection when it came out. And since then, I've had the really amazing pleasure of attending so many events hosted by libraries all around the country. And this book just sort of blows my mind. It's been picked as like a sort of one book, one read for a lot of different counties. And I've got to go to, from California to Georgia to Indiana. I'll be in Iowa this summer. I'm so deeply grateful for this, continued support that this community has shown me in this book. And I just really hope that my new book, The Poppy Fields, is equally meaningful and resonant for all of the readers and the book clubs who enjoyed The Measure. Similarly to The Measure, this new book is what I would consider, character-driven and emotionally grounded speculative fiction. And so it's set in, what feels like a very familiar world to ours, but there is a twist. And in this case, the twist is that in this world of the poppy fields, a brilliant scientist has invented what she claims is a cure for grief, and a way to finally help so many people who are suffering from the heartache of loss in their lives, something that I think, we all can relate to it at some point or another. But of course, this miraculous cure is not without its potential consequences and mysterious side effects. The controversial treatment allows patients to go to a place called the Poppy Fields, which is set in the sort of remote desert of California. And when you go there, you are put to sleep and you stay asleep. Some people stay asleep for as long as 2 months until you are awakened from this treatment, having been healed from the sort of heartbreak that brought you here. And so I think, the premise of this treatment appeals to anybody who has ever found themselves in a time of great struggle or heartbreak or loss, and really just wanted to fast forward through the pain and the hard part and come out on the other side. Certainly I've felt that experience before, and that was part of what inspired this book. But then the question becomes, what are we willing to sacrifice in order to be healed? And like The Measure, The Poppy Fields follows the multiple perspectives of an ensemble cast of characters, from the scientist who invented the sleep to the group of strangers who find themselves thrown together on an unexpected cross-country road trip in order to reach the poppy fields in the desert. These are some photos of me going on my own cross-country road trip and trips out to the desert and the poppy fields in California as I was researching the trip. This is me driving in the desert. That was the car in front of me. Me in Sedona, and then a poppy field in Antelope Valley, near where I live in Los Angeles. And these were all sort of parts of the research of the trip, because it takes place both in the lab, in the treatment center at the poppy fields, and on this road trip where this group of strangers are kind of, find themselves all in the same car together, along with a hitchhiking teenager who ends up kind of joining their motley crew, and a little dog who is accompanying one of the one of the characters. And so we follow them and their different perspectives heading to the poppy fields, and sort of the different motivations for why they want to seek out this treatment. And I think much like The Measure was driven by really human questions about the amount of time that everyone gets here on Earth, and what we want to do with that time, and how we treat the people around us. The poppy fields also, I hope, explores very universal and relatable questions about the human experience, but specifically focusing on loss and heartbreak, and the very sort of complicated and unique path towards healing that we all take, and questions about family and friendship and forgiveness. And while The Measure asked readers, would you choose to learn the length of your life? The poppy fields asks readers, if you could sleep through your pain and be healed, would you? And so I hope that this story inspires equally interesting and thought-provoking discussions among readers and book clubs. And I hope that, honestly, it also serves as a tribute to every single one of us who has ever lost someone that we love and has felt very alone in that moment. I hope that this book helps those readers feel a little bit less alone, because for me, one of the most incredible power of books is that it can make us feel less alone, and stories can make us feel more connected to people just by reading them. And so that's why I feel so honored and privileged to be able to keep writing stories like this, and why I'm so grateful to all of you for listening.
Thank you so much. This is one of those books where you really sit with it afterwards. You're like, I have a lot to think about. It kind of reminded me of the way I felt the first time I watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, of like, oh, would I do that?
Yeah, I've heard that as a
different vibe.
comp.
Oh
Yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. Yes, yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
interesting. And I love that movie. And similarly, it's something that doesn't exist in the real world right now, but maybe could in the future. And so it's something that kind of is worth thinking about.
Totally. Yeah. Lots to discuss here. I think book clubs are really going to love this one. So thank you so much for letting everyone know about the poppy fields. And I'm going to have everybody come back on screen.
This was great. Oh my God. I feel like we should all just sit down as we are now, but then just talk about our lives.
Or have a drink. Have a WAYWARD.
Or both.
Oh,
Or just sit and drink. Nice. Oh my God. So much heft and weight and love and truth here going on. It's pretty great. Thank you all so much. We have so much, so many comments, and just a lot of comments from people who are very, very happy to hear from all of you. So we want to get to as many as we can. We don't have to do a hard stop at 8, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So why don't we'll get to everybody's, not to worry. But I have a quick one first for Susan. And this is from Noella Fath Cutter. And she says, Wayward Girls, would this be considered historical fiction?
Thank you for that question. My editor had a term for it. She called it nostalgia fiction. It's definitely set, 50 years ago. And so in that sense, yeah, absolutely. And I definitely researched it like I was researching a historical time period, because it was before most of you were born. And I loved the research that I did, because so much of it had to do with music and the culture in 1968. So that was really exciting and gratifying. In the bookstore or the library, does it get, categorized as that? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it winds up, because people tend to think of historical fiction as things from way back then, but 1968 is definitely, 50 years ago. So thank you. I'll be curious to see where it ends up, if it doesn't read like historical fiction, I don't think, but we'll see. Thank you.
We've
Great
gotten
question.
in trouble by some librarians when we've said like the 70s or historical, and then I said like the 80s. I was like, okay, I promise I won't call it historical fiction. I promise.
Well, I said the 90s and it did not go well. It did not go well. I was like, well, I wasn't alive.
No.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would
they,
argue that
they talk about,
pre-COVID is historical.
yeah,
Let's
no, they
see.
talk about things being in living memory. So
Mm,
we're still alive. I'm here.
I don't know. I don't have a face, but oh. Lainey, Grace, we're talking to each other via text to make sure that we get questions, and just read out some lovely comments and questions for all of you. So Lainey, Grace, what have you got there?
I cannot stress enough how many lovely things are being said about all of your books. I can't even go through all of them. We'd be here for the next like 40 minutes, just me reading lovely comments.
That's okay. We got all night.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just a lot of excitement, lots of people who are like, oh, I'm already reading these, like these are wonderful. So yeah, we're really, really happy you're all here. But yeah, Lainey, do we want to jump into some questions?
Sure, yeah, I have one in the little, actually, oh, just in, we have two, but I'll start with the first one I had. So Nikki, it says, do you base these characters in the book on people you know or have met, or are they all completely fictional? Which I think is their possible way to say, like, in general, like in news, maybe. Is it based on people?
It's like, so I get this question a lot with my first book. So honestly, all of my characters are fictional, in my imagination. I think there's some, like, my first book, I had politician characters that maybe have some, amalgamation elements of different, other politicians in the news, but there's no one's ever like, oh, a definite basing on a real person. And certainly for, I draw elements of myself, as I'm sure all of us authors do, and put them into the characters. But I personally don't want any of my friends or family to read any of my books and recognize themselves on the page. So I think the safest way to go about that is to just rely on my imagination, and then certainly research. One of the characters in my new book is a firefighter, and so I got to read a lot of memoirs of men and women in the fire service to kind of shape that character. And now, as mentioned, I live in LA. Obviously, we just had massive devastation from fires out here, and so it feels like a real kind of honor to have this character in the book as a tribute to this community that now, my gosh, I'm so grateful for.
For Laura, Janet Lockhart writes, I love Mrs. Blossom and hope to see her again. Monica Maccabee says, we want to send Laura on more trips. And yay.
Well, so I do have two plans. I'm not currently writing a Mrs. Blossom book because I just decided to dive into something else very different and see what happened when Mrs. Blossom came out into the world and if people liked her as much as I did. I have taught a lot at a remote farm in Italy. So my friend Sarah Weinman, who reviews mysteries for the New York Times, has said, oh yeah, you'll call that one Murder al dente. And the other thing, and I'm going to get just a little teeny bit crazy nerdy here, but this is something that really has been a big boon to my life. There is an online free poetry course taught at the University of Pennsylvania, but for free through Coursera. It has over 80,000 enrollees, but I think there are only like maybe 200 of us who take it really seriously. It's taught live every fall in typical lecture mode online. And then the rest of the year, you can just go online. And so I spend so much of my time online in Zoom calls, just like, let's sit here for an hour and talk about this incredibly dense poem by Fanny Howe. And it's been one of the best things I've ever done with my life, is wandering into the world of, we call it ModPo. And so I definitely want to do Mrs. Blossom among the poets and send it to like a poetry conference in Ireland.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Yeah.
But also everybody join Mod Po. It's like haven't you just wanted your whole life to find a bunch of super nerds who just want to sit there and talk about the meaning of one word in an Emily Dickinson poem? It's like the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm sorry. Love Mod
Wow.
Po.
Do we have a link that we could put in the chat?
Oh shoot, I'll try to get one. I'll try. I think I
Okay.
can actually do this maybe. Hold on.
Okay, if you can't, don't worry about
I'll
it.
keep talking and I'll try to figure this out.
All right, I just want to read this last comment from Jennifer Winberry, who related to what Laura was talking about. Even though women of a certain age might choose not to delve deeply into technology, etc., they still have a lot to offer and teach. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay. Okay.
Hey, I just want to read, Allison, there so many comments and excitement and congratulations on the debut. A lot of comments about the cover. They love the cover. It's beautiful. And Grace, can you just like show it one more time? Because I don't know if anyone, it's got like little pencil shavings. I mean, I'm sure you saw it, but maybe
Yeah.
it's easier to while we're talking about it. But at the top, there's a little phoenix, which is really cool.
right.
Got it
Thank you,
right.
Grace. So
Yep.
like the little phoenix and the pencil shave, it's gorgeous. Allison, I don't know if you have anything to say about the cover, but I love it.
Yeah, no, it was totally not what I expected, but when it came back, it just felt super right. And I think
Yeah.
the pencil shavings are super clever. I think the way that the font drips also kind of alludes to something that
Yeah.
happens in the story, and the sides are kind of they're a little bit like pencil points. So yeah,
That's
there's
so
just a lot of small
true.
details going
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That's so true. Well, someone said you said a great phrase, who owns a story? And they've been thinking about that. And so I wanted to ask, and because the women in this family mainly, they're the main characters, but I don't know if you want to talk about any of the men in this story. There are several men on the side.
Yeah, yeah, the men on the side. I think the probably the main one is the grandfather, and I was very close with my grandfather as well. Though this grandfather character, I think, he's a more minor role, but I think he tends to be people's favorite characters. But yeah, I think so. He's also part of the family and taking care of the grandmother character as she's going through her illness. And I think that's, I don't know, one of the strongest things somebody can do is take care of somebody like that.
Oh, no, I want a whole book just of the grandfather. I need to know more. And so we actually, to come back, we have a question that I think will be good for Nikki and Allison. I just have to find it because it's somewhere on the screen, but it's about being drawn to, what draws you
Yeah.
to and you can both jump in, but what draws you to speculative fiction? You handle these difficult topics with a deft hand. So they just really want to hear more about why you have a speculative element in your work. So
I think for me, I like being able to examine, our world, our experiences, through a slightly different angle. And I think like it allows us to, for me, it allows me to tackle sort of, bigger, heavier topics. Like my first book obviously is about sort of confronting your mortality. This book is about sort of, healing after loss. But I think they become more accessible and sort of easier to talk about when they are at this like slight remove, because there is this like speculative lens, and it doesn't feel like the world of the measure where everybody finds out how long they live is not our real world. And so you can talk about these sort of heavier themes in a slightly safer way. And I think like and I really want to encourage people to have these conversations about things that maybe make us uncomfortable, and things that we don't always like to talk about. And I think I've heard from readers that they have led to really rich, discussions in book clubs. And so I think, doing it through this, it's a slightly different world from our own, allows you to kind of get into it in a way that I think we don't always get into it when it feels a little too close to home. And also they're really fun to write.
Yeah, I think I have a pretty similar answer. I have two answers, but the first one's pretty similar to Nikki's, where that step removed is helpful for. In this case, I kind of stumbled upon it, but the pencil magic is kind of a parallel to modern day data privacy and software. But nobody wants to read a data privacy book, so here we are. We've got magic pencils, and the other one is something that came up once for me with a conversation with my friend FCE, who wrote the Rise of Kyoshi books and some of the Avatar books. But we were talking about writing like family history without knowing a lot of your family history. And then he said something that just has really stuck with me, which is, if you don't know the history, why not add some magic to it? Like, why wouldn't you do that? And I just thought that was really lovely.
that. I love that. That's gorgeous.
Okay, go ahead. Who was that? Grace?
Yeah. Beth,
Go.
Susan, what are you working on next?
What am I working on next? Oh my gosh, I always spoil the idea that I have by actually writing it down. So right now I'm gathering inspiration on a book that the central setting of the book is a library. And that's, at this point, that's about all I can say, but it's time. I've never used the library as, a setting. There's always a library in every book I write, but I was really kind of raised in a library. There was a Carnegie Library in my childhood town that I referenced earlier, and it's still there, but it's a beautiful luxury restaurant now, and they've left the library intact, like the shelves and the books and everything. And so I'm kind of noodling around with that. It will be multi-generational, like so many of us now. We're dealing with the multiple generations in our families, from grandkids to elderly parents. And so right now I'm at the gathering stages, and I'm always jealous of other writers who have like this clear vision, and they sit down and they say, here's my book and here's how it's going to go. I'm probably wrong, but I think I picture Laura's books unfolding that way, where she just sits down and takes dictation, and here's how the crime plays out and the murder. Mine are like this magpie's nest, and I see something bright and shiny and I put that in. And so currently that's all I got right now.
I love that. I love when people talk about, like, I mean, we've had authors say, oh, I planned this out like line for line, and then people are like, kind of like fly by the seat of my pants. And it's like, you can get a good book out of any method like that. So I love hearing that.
And Grace, you found the link? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. For Laura did send it, so I put that in the chats for our viewers.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going over our 8 o'clock time, but there are a couple of things here that I just want to mention quickly. Janet Lockhart asks, what about the cozy form was most challenging for Laura Lippman? Pacing, plot, less cussing. I love that question.
I do not really cuss that much. Because between my daughter and my ex-husband, it's more creative to be the one who doesn't cuss so much. What was harder about the cozy is that you're in a closed community. And so the threat has to come from within, which means you have to build the community out so that there are more possible suspects, and that you have more ways to divert the reader's attention. Don't look at this person, look at that person. Don't think about that, think about this. So, but, it was really humbling. I teach writing every January at a program called Writers in Paradise in St. Petersburg. And I found myself making this was my, I think I've got this right. This was my 26th novel. And I found myself 26 books in, making all the same mistakes all over again. Having to remind myself that every person who crosses the page has to be a full person, that no one can be a plot device. Character informs plot. plot doesn't inform character. And it's hard to write about a nice person, by the way. It's much easier to write about bad people. I mean, one of my favorite writers is Nicholson Baker, who's wrote an entire novella about what happens in a man's mind while he's on the elevator on the escalator between floors. And he wrote The Everlasting Story of Nori. Do I have that right? Which is about a happy kid. Like writing about a person who's Mrs. Blossom is lying to herself about happy, but it's a really interesting challenge. And so I found everything about it really challenging in the best way. I mean, one of my big heroes coming into crime fiction was the late Margaret Meron. And I think Margaret's been a little bit forgotten, which is just criminal. Sorry for that. That's a bad pun. Margaret Meron's book, The Bootlegger's Daughter, just a great novel. It's a great novel if you're a literary fan, if you're a crime fiction fan, it even has a kind of a romance element to it. Margaret was just insanely great and was someone who was really supportive of me when I started out. And when I look back at Bootlegger's Daughter, I'm now even more astonished by the artistry of it.
That's great. I think we have time for, yes, Lainey, advice.
Yeah. All right. We had a very, I think, sweet question. It's from Samantha King, and it says, Laura and Susan are experienced writers with many novels. So what advice would they give to relatively new, novelists?
I think Laura just kind of said it best. She spoke for both of us when she said, every time you write a book, it's new. I come to every story with a beginner's mind and make no assumptions. It's sort of like playing an instrument or playing golf or something that you can never get perfect at. There are things that you can get better at, but you'll always be a little behind that curve. But for me, it's creatively, it's keep yourself fresh. Do whatever it takes to keep yourself fresh and stay excited. Like what Laura just said about the modpo.org. I just wrote a screenplay with my best friend, and it just kind of it energized me. And so, find ways to stay fresh. In publishing, it's, listen to your agent, listen to your editors, keep your promises, stay connected to bookstores and libraries, and try not to dive too deep into your social media because it'll mess with your head.
Excellent. I have a question for Allison before I give advice. Allison, have you written your second book yet?
Nope.
Have you started? Do you want to start?
Scraps here and there, yeah. I'll
The
take any
second-
advice you got.
The second book is actually the hardest book you'll ever write. That sophomore book, I'm walking two younger friends through it right now. I'm part of a very large WhatsApp group of female writers. That sophomore book is super tough because you don't have, the first book is like, look at me, I'm writing a book. And you're like the first time you ride a bicycle. Second book is a little bit hard, but you will do it and you will get through it. And one thing I do encourage writers to do is keep really good files that are all of their drafts. And like on a day when you're just really lost, you go to the previous book and you try to like find, well, where was I about this? And then you go back and you look where you were in that manuscript. And you're like, oh my God, I was so lost that day. I'll find my way out. It's like you're Hansel and Gretel and you work your way through this woods over and over again, and it keeps changing, and you have stones and you have breadcrumbs and you will run into a witch and you will save yourself. But you just keep going forward and you'll do it because I feel I have a teenage kid upstairs and she's like, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to have a job. And she has the very peculiar problem of having two parents who actually love what they do. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I love going to work every day because I just sit at my desk and make stuff up. So but you get Allison, you're gonna be fine. But just know that if that second book is really tough, it will be the toughest one you ever write. So you just and Nikki, you've already cleared that hurdle.
I love that. I love the "you will find a witch" too. That's so ominous. That can mean
More than
anything.
one.
I love that so much. So we are a little over, but we wanted to ask one final round robin question of what are you reading right now? One book you're reading, and if you're in between books, what's the last book you read or a book you recommend? And I am going to do my crazy frantic typing that I do to put all these in a catalog. So if I'm just like locked in, that's what's happening.
Who wants to go first?
I'm very lucky, as most writers are. People send us their books pre-pub or something like that, and so I got my hands on a book by Patty Callahan Henry called "The Story She Left Behind." It's coming out this month, and so I'm reading it. And actually, Patty and I are going to do a newsletter swap, so I'm going to send a newsletter out to her readers and vice versa. So I'm reading that, and then I just got this from bookshop.org. It is Propaganda Girls, The
Great
Secret
jacket.
War of the Women in the OSS by Lisa Rogak. I just love spy stories, and this is a factual one. This is a historical one. So I'm looking forward to cracking that open.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. Who wants to go next?
I can go. I'm
Okay.
very lucky that I'm going to a wedding in Italy in a few months. And so in advance, I'm working my way through the Elena Ferrante Neapolitan novels, which I know I'm like 20 years late to that party, I think, but it feels like the right time to, to be reading them before I go to Italy, because it's obviously one of the most, vivid depictions of Italian history. And
Those books are amazing.
Right. I was like, it's like the worst book to recommend right now because everyone's like, I already read that. But it is what is on my plate right now for my life.
I've got Wendy Corsi Staub's The Fourth Girl, which will be released, I think, in April. In full transparency, Wendy is a friend, but I also think she's amazing. I have just, and I wrote about this for my Substack newsletter, I have just ripped through the entire Slow Horses universe. I have not, I mean, I know everybody knows about the show and the show's great. I haven't been this excited about a series for really like 20 years. I could not stop reading them. And finally on audio, I'm listening to, it's a tough book, Shattered by Hanif Kureishi, which is about what happened after he took a really bad fall and is basically paralyzed below the neck and is recovering in an Italian hospital. I take falling down very seriously. It's a thing that happens when you get old, and I had a bad fall myself 2 years ago. It's an intense, difficult book, but I think really worth it.
Oh, I actually have one audiobook to add, and I can't remember the name. Oh, Notes from Under the Truck by Josh Brolin. It's an audiobook. It's an audiobook that he narrates, and it's really good.
I just finished reading Children of Time, also a few years late to that one. Currently reading Ministry of Time, and also Chaos, which just came out today. Third book in a sci-fi romance.
What a
I
cool
want a
cover.
sci-fi kick.
Yeah, that is a cool jacket. Well, we've gone happily. I feel like we could just sit here for another hour, but one librarian said, I want to stay on, but I have to close the library. But everybody knows that if they have to hop off, they know where to find this because it's available on Facebook and YouTube. And I don't even know where else. You're findable. Lady Grace, what should we say about this? Where else can we find everything?
Crowdcast, Facebook, YouTube shortly. And then you can see all of our replays on librarylovefest.com. we also have up there the next one, remember, April 8th. Don't miss it. And can't wait to see you again. And a little secret, if you're on the Crowdcast page and you've registered, you get access to eGalleys beforehand. So a little perk. Make sure to sign up for all the librarians. You get
Yeah,
to book
that's
early.
There was a librarian, Miriam Khan, who wrote somewhere in the whole Crowdcast. There are so many comments, so much love, so much excitement. You can go back and look at it yourselves, but she just wrote, my library hold list just exploded. So thank you for exploding hold lists at libraries across the country by coming on and talking about your wonderful books. It's been great. It's been so great to have you all here and talking to everybody. We have Susan Wiggs' book, Wayward Girls, July 15th. Laura Lippman's Murder Takes a Vacation, June 17th. We have Nikki Erlick, The Poppy Fields, June 17th. And the Phoenix Pencil Company by Allison, excuse me, by Allison King, July 22nd on sale. So plenty of time to read, download, love. If you love library reads, if you're a voter, well, you know what to do. Vote for these lovely books written by these lovely women. And thank you all. Is there anything before we hang up that anybody wants to say before we go? Because I hate we go, I should have said X, Y, Z. So that's to everybody here.
My pub date got moved to June 3rd.
Oh, for God's sakes, I can't get anybody's updates straight.
There's
June
an
3rd.
Edelweiss catalog for everyone online. So if you want to click it, it's all there. It's all good.
Yeah, that's true. It's all there in the catalog. Things get moved all the time. Anyway, Susan, Laura, Allison, Nikki, thank you both. Thank you all so much for spending the time with Annie, Grace, and myself. We are honored to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you at the
Thank you.
library.
See you at the library. Yeah. I'm doing a heart thing too with my hands, but you can't see.
And I'll see you all tomorrow on